The morning sun had just touched the rooftops of Austin when I saw my little girl running barefoot down the alley behind the Horizon Business Tower. Sophie's hair was tangled, her hands clutching that same paper lunch bag I'd packed the night before. My stomach sank. She should have been at school. Instead, she was running from something. From me. Or maybe from the world that kept pushing us into corners we didn't belong in. I work nights in that tower, the woman with the mop and bucket no one ever looks at. By the time those marble floors shine, my back feels like it's been split in half. But I keep going, because every dollar means food on the table and a roof that doesn't leak on Sophie's head. People in the building call it Caldwell Tower, named after Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire who owns half the skyline. To everyone else, he's a visionary. To me, he's the man who took everything from me and still wasn't done. I used to have an office 2 floors below his. I used to wear heels instead of work boots. But when I told him no, when I refused a hand he slid too far up my skirt, he smiled that cold smile and said, "You'll clean my floors before you ever walk in my office again." And now, every night I do. When the clock hits 9, Sophie waits at the back door, sometimes until midnight, sometimes till dawn. I tell her I'm fine. I lie. But that morning, when I saw her running like that, eyes red and cheeks streaked with tears, something inside me broke. She looked up at me, her voice shaking. "Manga, I'm going to find someone who will help you." I hadn't always smelled like bleach and cold floors. There was a time when my name was on company emails when people smiled as I walked past. But Ethan Caldwell made sure that version of me disappeared. The night I told him no, the night I chose my dignity over his promises, I lost everything. By Monday, my desk was cleared. By Friday, no one in the city would return my calls. Caldwell Tech made sure of that. Years later, when I begged for any job that would feed Sophie, I ended up right back under those same walls, mopping his marble floors. And every time he saw me, he'd smirk like a man watching a bird he'd caged himself. "You're lucky I'm letting you back in my building," he'd say. "Most people who cross me don't get a second chance." Second chance. He called this a second chance, scrubbing up after his late-night meetings while he walked past me with his glass of bourbon, watching me from behind. Some nights, he'd drop his glass just to see if I'd flinch. Others, he'd whisper things that made my skin crawl. I learned to hide bruises under sleeves. I learned silence. I told myself it was for Sophie, that one day I'd find a way out. But the night she followed me changed everything. I didn't know she was there, hiding behind a mop cart, her little hands gripping the edge. I only heard her voice later, when she told me what she'd seen. She said he was shouting, calling me names that made her cry. She said he grabbed my arm so hard, I almost fell. And she said she ran, down the stairwell, through the alley, straight into the night. When I found her hours later, her face was streaked with tears and dust. She whispered, "Mama, I told a man about you." I froze. "What man, Sophie?" He was outside the diner with the big bikes. Her voice shook, but there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before, determination. That tiny spark that refuses to die, even in the smallest heart. I didn't know it then, but that spark was about to set the whole city on fire. By the time Sophie told me what she'd done, it was already too late. She'd run into the street, desperate, wild-eyed, and fate must have been listening that night. She said there were motorcycles outside the diner. Big ones, chrome shining under the streetlights. Men in leather vests, tattoos glinting under neon signs. The kind of men I'd taught her to stay away from. But she ran to them anyway. "Please," she cried. "He's hurting my mama. The man in the glass building. He's rich. He's gonna kill her." That's how she told it. Sobbing, breathless, her little fists pounding against the vest of a man they called Jake Lawson, though everyone else called him Ryder. He crouched down so she could look him in the eye. "Slow down, sweetheart. Who's hurting your mom?" "Mr. Caldwell," she said. "He makes her cry every night." Jake told me later that the way she said my name stopped him cold, that there was something in her voice that didn't sound like a child. It sounded like truth. He stood up, turned to his crew, rough men with scars and stories of their own, and said 5 words that changed my life. "Boys, we're going for a ride." I didn't know any of this yet. All I knew was that midnight came and went, and the building was too quiet. Ethan was in one of his moods, pacing, muttering, glass in hand. The city glittered below us through those tall windows, and I kept scrubbing the same spot on the floor just to keep my hands busy. "You really think you're better than me?" he spat. "You're nothing without this job." I flinched when he slammed his fist against the wall. I didn't see the headlights outside. Not yet. Didn't hear the engines. Didn't know that a dozen Harleys were climbing the hill toward Caldwell Tower. But I felt it, the air shifting, the way the night suddenly held its breath. Then the intercom crackled downstairs, someone shouting, security running. And for the first time, Ethan's face went pale. "What the hell's going on down there?" he barked, grabbing his phone. That's when I heard it, the thunder of engines, the shattering of glass doors, and a voice echoing up the stairwell. "Step away from her." I turned toward the elevator just as it slid open, and there they were. Men in leather and steel, faces hard as iron, hearts heavier than they'd admit. And at their front stood Jake, the man my daughter had found in the dark. The room smelled like spilled bourbon and fear. Ethan Caldwell, the man who thought he owned everything he touched, took a step back when the elevator doors opened. There they stood, a wall of leather, metal, and purpose. The Steelhawks. Their boots echoed across the marble like thunder rolling through a canyon. The one in front, Jake, didn't shout. He didn't need to. His presence filled the room before his words did. "Step away from her." Ethan barked a laugh, sharp and hollow. "Who the hell are you? You think you could just break in here?" Jake didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, saw the bruise on my arm, the blood on my lip, and then looked back at Ethan. "We don't stand by when a man hurts a woman." I'll never forget the silence that followed. It wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence before a storm. Ethan swung first. Maybe out of panic, maybe out of pride, but his punch never landed. Jake caught his wrist midair, twisted, and sent him sprawling to the floor with a sound like breaking glass. "You're done," Jake said, voice low, final. For a moment, Ethan's mask cracked. The arrogance, the smirk gone. All that was left was a small, cowardly man clutching his wrist and stammering threats no one believed. Security tried to step in, but they hesitated when Jake's crew turned. 12 men, calm as stone, eyes cold but not cruel. They weren't there to start a fight. They were there to end one. Ethan stumbled back, pointing. "You're criminals. You'll all go to jail for this." Jake didn't blink. "Maybe, but you're going first." That's when Sophie appeared, my little girl, trembling but fierce, standing in the doorway with one of the bikers beside her. She looked so small in that oversized jacket, her voice shaking as she shouted, "He's lying. I saw him hit her. He hurts my mama every night." Ethan froze. Cameras flashed. I didn't even know Jake had told his men to record everything. Tiny red lights blinked from their vests, capturing every word, every bruise, every drop of fear that man had caused. Jake turned to me. "It's over. Grace." And for the first time in years, I believed him. The police arrived minutes later. Ethan tried to twist the story, waving his money like it could erase the truth. But truth has a way of burning through lies. The footage, the witnesses, even my little girl's trembling voice, made sure of that. I watched as they let him out in handcuffs, his empire of glass and pride finally cracking under the weight of his own cruelty. By dawn, the glass tower was swarming with police cars and flashing lights. I stood on the curb wrapped in a blanket, watching years of silence finally being heard. They led Ethan Caldwell out in cuffs, shouting about lawyers and power, but no one listened anymore. For once, the city didn't look at him with admiration. They looked at him with disgust. Sophie held my hand, her small fingers warm against the cold morning air. Jake stood beside us, arms crossed, his eyes on the man who'd made our lives a quiet hell. "You're safe now," he said quietly. I didn't know how to thank him. I just nodded, tears slipping down my face, Not from fear this time, but from relief. That night, the headlines spread everywhere. Biker club saved janitor from abusive billionaire. Hidden camera footage sparks citywide outrage. For weeks, reporters tried to find me to make a story out of my pain. But I didn't give interviews. I just wanted peace. And for the first time in years, Sophie slept through the night. Months passed. The city moved on, but the Steel Hawks didn't forget us. Jake checked in every now and then, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with nothing but a smile and a story from the road. When the community center downtown needed a manager, he was the one who put my name forward. "You've spent enough time cleaning up other people's messes," he told me. "Maybe it's time you help folks build something instead." So I did. We turned that old, abandoned building into a refuge, a place where women could come when the world got too cruel, a place where no one had to hide bruises or fear the night. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, I heard the familiar rumble of engines outside. Sophie ran to the porch, waving her arms. "Jake, Mama made cookies again." He laughed, that deep, steady sound that carried miles. "Guess I can't say no to that," he said, stepping off his bike. We sat on the porch, the three of us, as the day faded into gold. I looked at him, the man who'd stormed a billionaire's fortress because a little girl had asked for help. And I whispered, "You saved my life." He shook his head. "No, Grace. You saved it the day you chose to stand back up. The rest of us just followed your lead." Sophie giggled, passing him another cookie, crumbs on her cheeks. The world felt right again, not perfect, but right. The kind of right that comes after truth finally finds its voice. And as the evening settled around us, I thought about all the nights I'd spent scrubbing those marble floors, dreaming of freedom. I thought about the courage it took for an 8-year-old girl to run toward danger just to save her mother. And I thought about the men who proved that strength and kindness don't cancel each other. They belong together. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in a suit or a courtroom. Sometimes it comes roaring down the highway, wrapped in leather and loyalty. And that night, as the stars came out over Austin, I knew this for sure. Cruelty may have power for a while, but kindness, real, fearless kindness, always rides back.